Let me ask you something. Are you absolutely sure you're calculating earned value against the right baseline? You know, if you think the PMP exam is just about plugging numbers into a simple SPI or CPI formula, you might want to think again. The modern exam, and hey, more importantly, a real-world project, is all about how EVM connects with risk, with Agile, with sudden changes in scope. See, if you get that baseline wrong from the start, every single calculation you make after that is, well, it's just plain wrong. So today, we're going to bridge that gap between the simple math and what it takes to be an elite project leader.
Okay, so here's what we're going to tackle. First, we'll lock down the foundation, the performance measurement baseline. Then, we're going to get into something called the reserve trap. And trust me, it trips up so many people. After that, we'll talk about keeping your EVM in line with change control, dive into some really powerful forecasting techniques, and then we'll see how this whole thing actually works in the Agile world. And finally, we'll cover how you turn all these numbers into a compelling story for your stakeholders. You ready? Let's go.
So why is this so critical? I mean, really. It's because real projects are messy. They almost never go exactly according to plan. And the PMP exam? It knows this. It's not going to test you in some perfect little bubble. No way. It's going to throw these integrated scenarios at you that mash together risk, change requests, and agile thinking. The ability to see what's happening and adapt your metrics on the fly, that right there is the difference between just being a calculator and being a true project leader.
All right, first things first, the foundational baseline. You can think of this as the North Star for your project's performance. It is the single source of truth for every calculation, every forecast. Honestly, it's the bedrock of everything we're about to discuss. If you get this part right, you are setting yourself up for success.
So the Performance Measurement Baseline, or PMB, isn't just one document. Think of it as this perfect trifecta. It's your approved scope, your approved schedule, and your approved cost baselines, all locked together tight into one single integrated plan. And that lock is absolutely crucial. The golden rule here, the one you can't forget, is that EVM is always measured against the current PMB. If any one of those three pieces needs to change, it has to go through a formal change control process. You can't just change it on a whim. If you don't, you're basically trying to navigate a complex journey using an old, outdated map. It's just not going to work.
Having a perfect plan is one thing, but we all know reality is always, well, it's chaotic. So now let's talk about how we integrate that real-world chaos, all the risks and all the changes, into our perfect little model. Okay, let's talk about the reserve trap. This is a huge concept that trips people up constantly, both on the exam and in their day jobs. You've got two kinds of reserves. First, contingency reserves. These are for the known unknowns, risks you've actually identified and planned for. The key is they're part of the PMBI, so they get tracked by EVM automatically. But then you have management reserves. These are for the unknown unknowns, the big, shocking, unforeseen events. These sit outside the PMBI. You can't touch them without formal approval. Confusing these two is a massive error that can really mess up your project's financial picture.
So, what happens when a big change gets approved and you have to update your baseline? Well, your past performance, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, it gets locked in. It becomes part of the project's history. You don't just erase it. But from that exact moment forward, all your new measurements have to be against a new, updated PMB. We call this rebaselining. And here's the absolute key takeaway for the exam, so listen closely. Past variances stay in the history books, but all your future metrics, your EAC, your TCPI, they must be calculated against that new baseline. That's a non-negotiable rule. All right, so now that we know how to protect and maintain our baseline, let's open up the Advanced toolkit. This is where we stop just reporting on what happened in the past and start intelligently forecasting the future, especially when the pressure's on. When it comes to forecasting your estimated completion, or EAC, remember this. The PMP exam is testing your judgment, not just your ability to memorize a formula. You're going to get a scenario, and the first question you have to ask yourself is, what caused the variance? Was it a one-time thing, a total fluke? If so, you'll use the atypical formula. That assumes the rest of the project will go back to the original plan. But what if the problem is systemic, a recurring issue that's not going away? Then you have to use the typical formula, because that assumes your current performance trend is going to continue. It's all about analyzing the why behind the numbers. That's everything. Next up, one of my favorites, the Total Complete Performance Index, or TCPI. This metric tells you exactly how efficient you need to be for the rest of the project to finish on budget. But here's the trick question. Which budget are we talking about? If your goal is to somehow still hit your original budget, the BAC, that's one calculation.
But if that's totally unrealistic, you have to calculate your TCPI based on your new forecast, the EAC. This brings us to what I call the danger zone. See, a TCPI over 1.0 already means you have to work harder than you planned. But a TCPI over 1.3? Wow, that is a massive red alert. It likely means your goal is unachievable without some kind of major, serious intervention.
Okay, this is all fantastic theory for those classic traditional projects. But what about the world most of us live in now? How do we apply these incredibly powerful ideas in the fast-paced, modern world of Agile and hybrid projects? Let's connect those dots.
You know, in the Agile world, the words change, but the core ideas, they're exactly the same. So think about it this way. Your plan value, or PV, that's just your plan velocity, the number of story points you expect to complete in a sprint. And your earn value, or EV, well, that's the value of the story points your team actually finished, the ones that are truly done. And instead of these complex S-curves, Agile teams use simpler tools like burn down or burn up charts to see how they're doing. See? It's the same engine, just a different dashboard.
Okay, I need you to lean in for this one, because this might be the most important part of this whole explainer for your actual career. At the top of this funnel, you've got all your raw data, your CPI, SPI, EAC. But guess what? Your executives do not care about those acronyms. Your job as a leader is to be the translator. You have to filter that data through what we call business context. What does the CPI of 0.8 actually mean for the company's bottom line? Your communication should then deliver 3 crystal clear things. 1, here's where we are right now. 2, here's where we're headed. And 3, and this is the big one, here's what I recommend we do about it.
All right, we've covered a lot of theory. It's one thing to hear it, but another thing to apply it. So, let's put it to the test. Time for a quick situational pop quiz. Let's see what you've got.
Okay, here's the scenario. Your project had a massive cost overrun because one of your key suppliers suddenly went bankrupt. It was a one-time, totally anomalous event. Now, you've already found the new supplier who can provide the goods at the original budgeted rates. So the question is, which approach should you use to forecast your estimate of completion? I'll give you a second to think. The answer is the atypical forecast. And why? Because the problem was a one-off event. It's not going to keep happening. So you take your actual cost to date and you simply add the remaining budget for the rest of the work. You get to assume that from here on out, the project will perform just like you originally planned.
So let's pull this all together. Look at this as your complete mental map, your whole ecosystem. Over on the left, you have all your inputs, risk registers, agile velocity, change requests. That stuff feeds into the central brain, your situational forecasting, where you use your judgment to pick the right tools for the job. And the output on the right? It isn't just a bunch of numbers. It's real business value. It's clear, actionable recommendations for your leadership. If you can master this flow, you won't just pass the PMP exam, you'll be a much more effective project leader.
And there you have it. You now have the advanced analytical tools that elite project integrators use every day. But remember, having the tools is one thing. Knowing when and how to apply them is everything. If this helped you sharpen your EVM strategy, make sure you explore our other explainers on project management. We're going to keep breaking down these critical topics to help you succeed, both on the exam and in your career. Thanks for watching.
Learning reinforcement.
You can calculate your earned value metrics with perfect mathematical precision and still fail the project if those numbers are measured against the wrong plan. The modern PMP exam focuses on your ability to adjust to project changes. If you apply a standard formula to an outdated baseline, the resulting metrics will not reflect the current reality of the work. Advanced earned value management requires the integration of risk data, formal change control, and situational judgment to determine how the project will actually perform in the future. We will examine the architecture of the performance measurement baseline, the specific rules for handling risk reserves, and the mechanics of rebaselining. We will also translate these predictive tools into agile environments. Mastering these adjustments ensures that your forecasting remains accurate, even when the original project budget is no longer valid. Every earned value metric is measured against the performance measurement baseline. This is the approved plan that serves as the reference point for all cost and schedule data. This diagram shows the PMB architecture. It is an integrated plan built from 3 components: the scope, schedule, and cost baselines. When project risks materialize, they drive variances into these components, causing the cost and schedule metrics to deviate from the original plan. Contingency reserves are established to handle known risks. Notice that this block is located directly inside the approved performance measurement baseline. Because these reserves are part of the baseline, standard earned value calculations track their consumption as the project progresses. Management reserves are handled differently. These are allocated for unknown risks and set entirely outside the boundaries of the PMB. Standard earned value tracking does not include management reserves. Using these funds require formal approval to move them into the active baseline. On the exam, confusing these two reserve pools will lead to calculation errors. You cannot measure performance against funds that are not part of the active approved plan. Significant scope changes can be disruptive to a project in progress. When these changes are approved, the project manager must update the tracking system. The rules of integrated change control state that new earned value metrics cannot be reported until the baseline is formally updated to reflect the new scope. During rebaselining, the performance measurement baseline expands. The plan's geometry changes to absorb the newly approved work and its associated budget. A clear line is drawn at the moment of the change. All performance data recorded before this point is archived. Past variances are locked in the project history. Rebaselining does not erase previous cost overruns or schedule delays. It simply acknowledges a new starting point for the remaining work. After the update, all future projections, such as the estimate to complete, reset. They are now calculated against the parameters of the new baseline. Attempting to measure a new project scope against an old baseline leads to inaccurate reporting and failed audits. Selecting the correct estimate at completion formula requires analyzing the cause of a variance. Real-world outcomes depend on whether an issue is recurring or a one-time event. For example, imagine a project suffers a significant cost overrun because a primary supplier unexpectedly declares bankruptcy. You find a replacement supplier who agrees to complete the remaining work at the prices originally set in your budget. To forecast the final cost, we use a decision matrix to determine if the variance will continue to affect the project. Since the bankruptcy is an isolated event and the new supplier's rates match the original budget, this is an atypical variance. The atypical formula adds the actual costs spent so far to the remaining budgeted work. It assumes all future work will proceed at the originally planned rate. This differs from a typical variance, where systemic performance issues suggest that current cost trends will continue for the rest of the project. We also use the to-complete performance index to determine the efficiency required to finish the project on target. If the calculated TCPI is higher than 1.3, it indicates the team must perform 30% more efficiently than originally planned. You calculate this against the original budget if it is still reachable, or against a new forecast if the original budget is no longer realistic. A TCPI above 1.3 is a mathematical warning. It suggests that the project cannot be recovered through minor efficiency gains and may require a change in strategy or scope. These principles also apply to Agile and Hybrid environments. The logic of tracking progress against a plan remains consistent across different methodologies. This diagram shows how predictive tools map to Agile. While the visuals change from Gantt charts to burn-up charts, the core data points remain the same. In Agile, planned value is derived from the team's planned velocity, the work they intend to complete in a timeframe. Earned value in Agile is measured by done story points. These are features that have been completed and formally accepted by the product owner. Partial work does not count towards earned value. If a feature is not fully completed and accepted, it earns zero value in the current calculation. Whether you are tracking story points or labor hours, the objective is to provide an objective measurement of progress against the plan. The purpose of these advanced techniques is to provide stakeholders with clear information that helps them make decisions. When presenting to executives, focus on the summary data shown here, the current status, the projected final cost, and your recommendations for the next steps. Stakeholders often require you to translate technical metrics like CPI and SPI into their specific business impacts, such as potential budget shortfalls or launch delays. To succeed on the exam, you must maintain baseline integrity, select the appropriate forecasting formulas for the situation, and apply these concepts correctly across different project methodologies. With these tools, you can provide more accurate forecasts for complex projects. For a final revision and exam tips, continue to Episode 10. Integrating risk management and change control with earned value management provides the analytical depth necessary to navigate shifting project requirements.